Welcome, dear viewers, to Family Secrets Unveiled. Tonight, we delve into a story so haunting, so profoundly unsettling, it will challenge everything you think you know about identity and the fragile tapestry of memory. It begins, as so many of these tales do, not with a sudden explosion of drama, but with a quiet, insidious creep, a shadow slowly extending its reach into the brightly lit corners of an ordinary life. Our story centers on Elara Vance, a woman in her late 30s, living a life that, from the outside, appeared perfectly calibrated. She was a successful architect, her designs gracing the skylines of burgeoning cities, each structure a testament to her precision and vision. Her days were a symphony of blueprints, client meetings, and the satisfying hum of creativity. Her evenings a cozy ritual with her devoted husband, Marcus, a gentle soul with a booming laugh and an unwavering adoration for Elara. Their suburban home, nestled amongst manicured lawns and whispering oak trees in a quiet New England town, was a sanctuary of comfort and shared dreams. Elara was elegant, with striking emerald eyes that held a hint of distant melancholy, usually softened by a quick, easy smile. Her dark, silken hair often fell in loose waves around her shoulders, a frame for a face that exuded competence and a quiet grace. Yet, beneath this veneer of perfection, a subtle current of unease had always pulsed, a faint, almost imperceptible discord in the harmonious melody of her existence. She often felt a disconnect, a vague sense of being an observer in her own life, as if a crucial piece of her personal narrative remained just beyond her grasp. She dismissed it, as many do, as the existential angst of a thoughtful professional, the quiet hum of a soul seeking deeper meaning. The catalyst for the unraveling of Elara's carefully constructed world wasn't a dramatic revelation, but something far more mundane, yet infinitely more chilling. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a day like any other, as she waited in the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room of her dentist's office. Her eyes, idly scanning the assortment of aged magazines, drifted towards a bulletin board near the reception desk. It was plastered with local announcements, lost pets, upcoming community events, and, tucked away in a corner, a collection of faded, missing person posters. A familiar ache, a vague sense of sadness for the unknown souls depicted, settled in her chest. She had always been empathetic, a trait Marcus often teased her about, saying she carried the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. As her gaze continued its languid journey across the board, it snagged. Stopped dead. Her breath caught in her throat, a cold, metallic taste blooming on her tongue. Her heart, a moment ago a steady drum, now hammered against her ribs with frantic urgency. The poster, yellowed with age, depicted a young girl no older than 15. Her hair, a cascade of dark waves, framed a face strikingly similar to Elara's own. The same emerald eyes, though in the photograph, they held a brighter, more youthful spark, unburdened by the years and experiences that now etched faint lines around Elara's. The delicate curve of the nose, the subtle tilt of the chin, even the almost imperceptible dimple that appeared when the girl smiled, it was all there. A mirror. A ghostly echo from a past she couldn't recall. The name beneath the photograph, however, was not Elara Vance. It was Lila Monroe, missing since May 12, 1998. The date sent a jolt through her. She would have been roughly the same age. A wave of dizziness washed over her, the fluorescent lights of the waiting room seeming to flicker and dim. Her hands trembled as she reached out, her fingers hovering inches from the glossy surface of the poster, as if touching it might shatter the fragile reality she clung to. The world outside the dentist's office, once a clear and distinct entity, now felt like a shifting mirage. The details on the poster, meticulously printed, began to swim before her eyes. Description: approximate 5 feet 4 inches, dark hair, green eyes. Last seen wearing a blue denim jacket and white t-shirt. Every word, every descriptor, resonated with a terrifying familiarity. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was an uncanny, almost supernatural congruence. A cold dread, a primal fear, began to coil in her gut. Who was Lila Monroe? And why did this stranger's missing person poster feel like a portal to a forgotten part of her own soul? The receptionist called her name, Elara Vance. The dentist will see you now. The sound of her own name, a name she had carried with pride and certainty for decades, now felt foreign, a whisper in a storm of confusion. She stumbled to her feet, her legs suddenly heavy, her mind a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. The image of Lila Monroe, a phantom from a forgotten past, was seared into her consciousness, an indelible mark that would forever alter the landscape of her life. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a revelation, a terrifying invitation into a labyrinth of buried truths that threatened to consume her. The comfortable life she knew, the identity she embraced, was suddenly a house of cards, teetering on the precipice of an unimaginable collapse. This was the moment her perfect world began to crack, allowing the first chilling whispers of a long-buried secret to seep through. And as those whispers grew louder, Elara would find herself spiraling into a nightmare where the truth was not just elusive, but dangerous. The dentist's appointment, a blur of drills and polite conversation, passed in a haze for Elara. She nodded, offered perfunctory responses, her mind a frantic carousel of images, the smiling face of Lila Monroe, the dates, the chilling descriptors. How could this be? How could a photograph of a missing girl from 2 decades ago so perfectly mirror her own reflection, yet bear a different name? The questions gnawed at her, sharp and insistent, eclipsing the dull ache of a recent filling. She left the office in a daze, the bustling street a cacophony of sounds she barely registered. Her world, once so ordered and logical, was now fragmented, each piece vibrating with an unsettling dissonance. Back in the quiet sanctuary of her home, the poster remained an invisible, yet intensely palpable, presence. She tried to rationalize it, to dismiss it as a strange coincidence, a trick of the light, an elaborate prank by some mischievous teenager. But the unsettling familiarity, the undeniable pull, wouldn't allow it. It felt less like a chance encounter and more like a premonition, a long-dormant truth stirring from its slumber. Marcus, ever perceptive, noticed her unusual quietness that evening. He found her staring blankly at her half-eaten dinner, her emerald eyes distant, clouded with an unfamiliar distress. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice laced with concern, reaching across the table to gently squeeze her hand. "You've been miles away since you got back." Elara hesitated, the words, "I think I saw myself on a missing person poster," feeling too outlandish, too insane to voice aloud. How could she explain something that sounded like the premise of a low-budget psychological thriller? She simply shook her head, offering a weak smile. "Just a long day, darling. A tricky design problem." She hated lying to Marcus, their relationship built on a foundation of unwavering honesty. But this felt different. This felt like a secret that belonged to her alone, a dark seed germinating in the fertile ground of her own forgotten past. That night, sleep offered no refuge. Her mind raced, replaying the image of the poster, the details, the date. May 12, 1998. Where had she been that day? What memories did she have from her mid-teens? Strangely, her recollection of her early life felt hazy, like looking through a frosted window. She remembered snippets. Her parents, always loving but somewhat distant, their comfortable suburban home in a different state, the usual teenage dramas. But specific events, emotional milestones, often felt constructed, like a story she had been told, rather than truly lived. She remembered starting at a new school in a new town around that time, after her parents decided to move for her father's career. A fresh start, they had called it. But now it felt less like a fresh start and more like a carefully orchestrated redirection. A new town, a new school, a new identity? The thought was a chilling whisper in the dark. The next morning, driven by an insatiable hunger for answers, Elara began her clandestine investigation. She couldn't bring herself to go back to the dentist's office. The thought of seeing that poster again, of having her worst fears confirmed, was paralyzing. Instead, she turned to the digital world, a vast ocean of information. She meticulously typed Lila Monroe missing 1998 into search engines. The internet, a powerful, albeit sometimes overwhelming, tool, quickly yielded results. The same faded photograph appeared, replicated on various missing persons databases, forums dedicated to cold cases, and even local news archives. The details were identical. The age, the description, the last known whereabouts, a small park in a town she had never heard of, Havenwood, Massachusetts. Elara's current home was in Connecticut, a few hours' drive away. Not an impossible distance. As she delved deeper, she uncovered more fragments. Lila Monroe, a bright, artistic girl, an only child. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Monroe, were described as devastated, clinging to the hope of her return. There were old news articles, tearful appeals, local police statements. The case had gone cold years ago, a heartbreaking statistic among thousands. But what truly sent a shiver down Elara's spine were the comments, buried deep within a forgotten online forum. Someone, a former classmate, had written, "Lila was so quiet, so sweet. She always seemed a little out of place, like she had a secret world no one else knew about." Another commented, her family was new to Havenwood, moved from out of state just a few years before she disappeared. These seemingly innocuous details began to intertwine with Elara's own fragmented memories, creating a tapestry of unsettling possibilities. Her parents had also moved to a new state around that time. She had also been the new kid. The parallels were too precise to be mere coincidence. The most disturbing discovery came in the form of a grainy, black and white school photograph from Havenwood High School, dated 1997. It was an old yearbook scan, barely legible. But there, amongst a sea of smiling teenage faces, was a girl with dark, wavy hair and strikingly familiar emerald eyes. Lila Monroe, caught in a moment of youthful innocence. And next to her, almost obscured by a fold in the page, was another girl, slightly out of focus, with a shy smile and a familiar birthmark above her left eyebrow, a birthmark identical to Elara's own, one she had always considered uniquely hers. The girl in the photo was labeled Elizabeth Vance. Elizabeth. Not Elara. But the resemblance, the birthmark, it was undeniable. Her head spun. Two girls, strikingly similar, one missing, the other present, both connected to the same time and place. Was Elara a fabricated identity? Was her entire life a meticulously constructed lie, built on the disappearance of another? The ground beneath Elara's feet felt like quicksand. Her husband, her career, her home, everything she held dear now felt precarious, built on a foundation of shifting sand. She looked at her hands, the familiar lines on her palms, the faint scar on her index finger from a childhood fall. Were these her hands? Or were they Lila's? The existential dread was suffocating. She needed to know the truth, no matter how devastating. The whispers from the deep, the faint echoes of a forgotten life, were growing louder, demanding to be heard. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was on the precipice of a discovery that would either free her or utterly destroy her. The first threads of a tangled web had been found, and Elara, unknowingly, was already caught. The revelations from her online deep dive had left Elara feeling disoriented, as if her very essence had been wrenched from its moorings. The name, Elizabeth Vance, the birthmark, the undeniable photographic evidence, it was all too much to be a mere coincidence. Her life, a carefully curated tapestry of memories and experiences, now felt like a forgery. The once comforting walls of her home seemed to press in on her, each shadow hiding a potential secret, each familiar object a silent witness to a monumental deception. Marcus, increasingly concerned by her withdrawn demeanor and haunted eyes, pressed her gently. "Elara, you're not yourself. Please talk to me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." His genuine love and unwavering support, once a source of strength, now felt like a crushing weight, a reminder of the innocent man she was inadvertently deceiving. How could she explain that the woman he married might not be who she thought she was? That their entire shared history might be built on a foundation of shifting sand? Driven by a desperate need for answers, Elara made a decision that would irrevocably alter her path. She had to go to Havenwood, Massachusetts. She concocted a plausible lie for Marcus, an architectural conference in Boston that required an early departure and a few extra days of research. He kissed her goodbye, a lingering warmth on her lips that felt undeserved, his eyes filled with a familiar affection that now pierced her with guilt. The drive to Havenwood was a blur, the landscape passing by like a flickering film reel. Each mile closer to the small, unassuming town felt like a step deeper into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Havenwood was exactly as she had imagined, a quaint New England town, steeped in history, its main street lined with old brick buildings and sleepy storefronts. It felt frozen in time, a stark contrast to the bustling modernity of her own life. Her first stop was the public library, a grand, albeit dusty, edifice that seemed to hold the weight of generations within its walls. She approached the librarian, a kindly woman with spectacles perched on her nose. "I'm researching local history," Elara began, her voice surprisingly steady, specifically, the missing person case of Lila Monroe from 1998. The librarian's eyes clouded with a familiar sadness. "Ah, Lila," she sighed, "a tragedy. The town never quite recovered." She directed Elara to the microfiche archives, a treasure trove of old newspapers and local records. Hours blurred into an agonizing search. She found more articles, more grainy photos, more detailed accounts of Lila Monroe's disappearance. The local police had launched an extensive search, but found nothing. No body, no ransom note, no credible witnesses. It was as if Lila had simply vanished into thin air. But then, buried deep within a forgotten issue of the Havenwood Gazette, an article from late 1998 caught her eye. It wasn't about Lila. It was a small, almost insignificant piece about a local couple, the Vances, who had recently moved to Havenwood and were quickly integrating into the community. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, delighted to be raising their daughter, Elizabeth, in such a charming town. And accompanying the article was a small, blurry photograph. It was her parents. Her adoptive parents. And standing proudly between them, a young girl with dark, wavy hair and strikingly familiar emerald eyes, Elizabeth Vance. Elara Vance. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The piece de resistance, the final, chilling confirmation. The world tilted. Elara stumbled out of the library, the afternoon sun a blinding assault on her senses. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision, forming a mosaic of betrayal and calculated deception. Her parents, the Vances, had moved to Havenwood shortly after Lila Monroe's disappearance, bringing with them a daughter they called Elizabeth, a girl who bore an uncanny resemblance to the missing teenager. Had they simply found a lost girl and given her a new name? Or was something far more sinister at play? The thought was a cold, sharp blade twisting in her gut. Her next destination was the old Monroe residence, a quiet, two-story house on the outskirts of town. It looked well-maintained, but carried an air of quiet sorrow, a lingering echo of heartbreak. As Elara stood across the street, observing the house, a car pulled into the driveway. An elderly couple emerged, their faces etched with the lines of time and profound grief. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. Elara's breath hitched. This was it. The moment of truth. She crossed the street, her legs feeling like lead. As she approached, Mrs. Monroe, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, looked up. Her eyes, faded but still sharp, widened. A gasp escaped her lips, a trembling hand rising to her mouth. "Lila," she whispered, her voice a fragile reed in the sudden silence. Mr. Monroe, initially startled, slowly turned. His jaw dropped, his eyes fixated on Elara's face, a torrent of raw emotion washing over his features. "It can't be, it just can't be." Elara, tears streaming down her face, could only nod. "My name is Elara Vance," she managed, her voice thick with emotion, "but I think I'm your daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy with decades of unspoken truth. What followed was a torrent of revelations, a cascade of painful memories and desperate confessions. The Monroes, their voices choked with tears, explained the unbearable anguish of losing Lila. They described the police investigation, the eventual cold case status, the crushing weight of unanswered questions. And then, Elara shared her story, the poster, the fragmented memories, the online investigation, the discovery of Elizabeth Vance. As the pieces converged, the full horror of the situation unfurled. After Lila's disappearance, the Vances, her adoptive parents, had indeed moved to Havenwood. They had been close friends with the Monroes, a friendship that had soured dramatically after Lila went missing. The Monroes, in their grief, had slowly begun to suspect the Vances of knowing more than they let on. There had been whispered arguments, veiled accusations, a slow, agonizing rupture of their once-close bond. But with no proof, no motive, the police had dismissed their suspicions. And then the final, gut-wrenching twist emerged, not from the Monroes, but from Elara's own resurfacing memory fragments, triggered by being in the place she once knew as Lila. A flash. A darkened room. A loud argument. Her father, Mr. Vance, yelling. Her mother, Mrs. Vance, frantic. And then, a sickening thud. A fall. And the chilling words, whispered by her mother to her father, no one can ever know. We have to make it look like she ran away. Elara remembered the fear, the pain, the disorientation. She remembered being told, over and over, that her name was Elizabeth, that her old life was gone, that her new parents were her only family now. They had gaslighted her, manipulated her, convinced her that the trauma she experienced was a figment of her imagination, slowly molding her into the identity they had carefully crafted for her. She hadn't run away. She had been trapped, psychologically enslaved by the very people who were supposed to protect her. The Vances had accidentally caused Lila's fall during an argument, perhaps over her desire to run away from their suffocating control, or some other teenage rebellion. Instead of seeking help, they had panicked, covering up the incident, disposing of the body, though even that detail remained murky in Elara's fractured memory, and then, by a cruel twist of fate, had encountered a traumatized, disoriented young girl wandering near the scene. A girl who was a dead ringer for Lila. A perfect replacement. A twisted, desperate attempt to fill the void, to rewrite their own tragic story, and to silence any questions about Lila's actual fate. They had given her a new name, a new history, and slowly, systematically, erased Lila Monroe from existence, replacing her with Elizabeth Vance. The air grew heavy with the weight of this monstrous truth. Elara was not just Elara Vance, she was Lila Monroe, resurrected from the ashes of a stolen identity, a living testament to a crime decades in the making. The world had gone from gray to black, the comfortable reality she had inhabited shattered into irreparable fragments. She had found herself, yes, but in finding herself, she had unearthed a horror beyond imagining, a web of deceit woven by the very people who had raised her. The confrontation, though not with her parents, was a raw, visceral explosion of grief, anger, and the chilling realization that her entire life had been a meticulously constructed lie. The silence that followed, filled only with the soft sobs of the Monroes and Elara's own ragged breathing, was deafening. The truth had been unveiled, stark and unforgiving, leaving behind a landscape of emotional devastation. The days that followed the devastating revelation in Havenwood were a blur of raw emotion, legal complexities, and the painstaking process of piecing together a shattered life. For Elara, or rather, Lila, the initial shock gave way to a profound, aching grief for the stolen years, the erased memories, and the innocent childhood she never truly had. The Monroes, her biological parents, embraced her with a love that transcended decades of pain, a fierce, protective embrace that slowly began to mend the gaping wounds in her soul. They shared stories, old photographs, and poignant anecdotes of Lila, the girl who had vanished, the daughter they had mourned for so long. Each memory, each shared tear, was a step towards rebuilding a past that had been meticulously dismantled. The legal repercussions were swift and severe. Based on Elara's recovered memories and the Monroes' long-held suspicions, the local police reopened the cold case. The Vances, confronted with overwhelming evidence, including the undeniable medical records of Elara's birth as Lila Monroe and their subsequent legal adoption of a child named Elizabeth at the exact time Lila disappeared, were arrested. The truth, finally, had clawed its way into the light. The Vances, it turned out, were indeed friends with the Monroes and had been present during a heated argument between Lila and her parents, witnessing Lila storm out of the house. Later that evening, in a horrific twist of fate, the Vances, who had been struggling with infertility and a strained marriage, encountered a traumatized, disoriented Lila wandering near a secluded wooded area. Instead of bringing her to safety or informing the police, a desperate, dark impulse took hold. They saw an opportunity, a child to fill the void in their own lives, and a way to silence any questions about Lila's initial disappearance that they might have inadvertently witnessed. They had taken her, convinced her she was Elizabeth, and meticulously erased her past, moving states and creating a new life, hoping to bury the truth forever. The chilling realization was that while they had not directly caused Lila's initial disappearance, they had exploited a moment of vulnerability and trauma, effectively kidnapping her and fabricating her entire new identity. They had stolen her life, piece by agonizing piece. Marcus, Elara's husband, was a pillar of unwavering support throughout the entire ordeal. The initial shock, the confusion, the pain of realizing his wife's past was a carefully constructed lie, was immense. But his love for Elara, the woman he knew, the soul he cherished, transcended the complexities of her identity. He stood by her side, a constant, comforting presence, helping her navigate the emotional minefield, attending every court hearing, holding her hand as she reconnected with her biological family. Their marriage, forged in the crucible of this unimaginable truth, emerged stronger, deeper, built on an even more profound understanding and acceptance. He grieved with her for Lila Monroe and celebrated with her the reclaiming of Elara Vance. The healing process, however, was not linear. It was a winding, arduous journey. Elara had to reconcile the two identities, Lila, the lost girl, and Elara, the successful architect. She chose to keep the name Elara Vance, a testament to the strength and resilience she had cultivated despite the lies, but she embraced her full history as Lila Monroe. It was a reclaiming of her fragmented self. She continued her work, finding solace in the precision of her designs, but now there was a new depth to her vision, a poignant understanding of the fragility of human constructs, both physical and emotional. She spent countless hours with the Monroes, listening, learning, allowing the stories of her true past to slowly fill the voids in her memory. She mourned the grandparents she never knew, the birthdays she missed, the simple moments of a childhood stolen. But even amidst the sorrow, there was profound hope. Lila Monroe had been found. Elara Vance had found her true self. Her story, once a harrowing tale of a stolen identity, became a powerful narrative of resilience, the enduring strength of the human spirit, and the unyielding power of truth to ultimately emerge from the deepest shadows. It was a testament to the fact that, even when memories are suppressed and identities are fabricated, the echoes of who we truly are can never be completely silenced. They linger, waiting for the right moment to surface, demanding to be heard. Elara's journey was a stark reminder that identity is not merely a name or a history, but a complex tapestry woven from experiences, relationships, and the deepest chambers of our being. She learned that even when faced with the most shattering truths, love, family, and the courage to confront the past can illuminate the path forward. Her life was a living example that healing is possible, that even after decades of darkness, the light of truth can pierce through, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. And so, as we close this chapter on Family Secrets Unveiled, Elara Vance, once Lila Monroe, stands as a beacon of hope. Her story reminds us that beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives, profound mysteries can lie buried, waiting for the spark of recognition, the faint echo in a forgotten poster to bring them to light. It is a story not just of a missing person found, but of a soul found, a past reclaimed, and a future forged with strength and authenticity. If Elara's incredible journey resonated with you, if it left you questioning the hidden depths of identity and truth, please consider giving this video a like. Share it with someone who might appreciate a story of resilience and the unwavering pursuit of what's real. And most importantly, subscribe to Family Secrets Unveiled and hit that notification bell so you don't miss another profound tale of secrets brought to light. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds a way.